So the entire story of December is the build to Ultimate X2, which is teased by Chris Sabin on this show.
X2, like the X-Men movie.
Yeah, the best X-Men movie too.
What was in X2?
The one with the guy with the psychic powers.
He's in all of them.
No, it was a different guy with the psychic powers though.
Okay. I remember Last Stand. That was like my favorite movie as a kid because I didn't know what good movies were.
The classic period of childhood where it's just like loud noises and cool characters equals cool movie, and then you watch it, it's like, oh no.
Yeah. I still have a fondness for those movies because of that reason, I feel.
Even though The Last Stand is terrible.
Yeah. I still like it though.
X2 and X1 are actually really good movies.
It's funny how The Last Stand is still like the best Dark Phoenix movie they've done.
Is that just a bad story? Have we actually secretly worked out that it's just not a very interesting story?
I think it's interesting. It just has to be something that's actually built up to. Like, it's a long-term story. It's not something you do... Like, the one that they recently did was unforgivable. They're like, all right, it's the second movie. We're going to do Dark Phoenix.
Well, it was the fourth movie. Because there was First Class, Days of Future Past, Apocalypse, and then Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, but they had like a movie's worth of build.
Yeah, it was the second with Jean Grey.
Yeah, so, it's just something that has to actually been built to.
I don't know. I think secretly it's not a very interesting story, even if it's an iconic comic story.
Yeah, which sometimes maybe things don't translate. But I think it could be translated well. I just think it hasn't been. To
be fair, Dark Phoenix does have the best action scene in the X-Men movie. Mm-hmm. There's that scene at the end of the movie where they're on a train, and it just kicks ass. There's like 2 minutes of that movie that are as good as any X-Men movie has ever been, and the rest of the movie is pretty garbage. But that 2 minutes where it's just Magneto knocking dudes off trains with his freaking magnet powers, and it's just because very rarely in those movies do you get just unadulterated the X-Men come together and kick some ass, and that's a scene where the X-Men come together and kick some ass, and it's so good.
They also did it in X-Men: The Last Stand.
They didn't kick much ass though.
They kicked all those, like, C-tier mutants' ass.
Yeah, all the goons trying to take their powers with the guns, with the power-draining guns.
Yeah, that rocked. I was gonna say that, is Magneto just the most cinematic of the X-Men, and that's why he works the best?
Like, he's an interesting character with depth and sides to him, that you can play babyface and heal Magneto interestingly, so I think that's the reason he works very well. It also helps that, like, you cast Ian McKellen as him in the first place. So that does a lot of the heavy lifting.
And Fassbender, like, let's be real, he killed it as well, so...
You cast 2 tremendous actors to carry the weight of that role, and they did so very, very well, so I think that does help. I do think Magneto is, like, one of the deeper, more interesting, more layered comic book villains that has, like, sides and interesting backstory and meaningful backstory that you can do a lot of things with.
But I also find myself, whenever I think back to any of the X-Men movies, all of my favorite scenes are Magneto scenes. Like, I was rewatching the scene where people love this. I was rewatching the scene the other day where he broke out of the plastic prison by using the iron in the man's blood.
Yeah, it rules.
And I was like, oh, he's the best character they've ever done.
Yeah, and, like, they couldn't have cast, like, Professor X and Magneto better. Like, it's impossible to do better than Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen as the people to play those roles. You could, like, legitimately, you could not pick 2 better human beings to play those characters. And you may never be able to pick 2 better human beings.
Which is why you should maybe just do Fassbender again now.
Yeah. And, like, it's the same thing with Hugh Jackman. He was so good as Wolverine that you're just like, there'll be another Wolverine and he'll probably be pretty good, but you nailed it the first time, so it's going to be quite hard.
Just some other scenes that immediately came to mind was, like, the scene where, I really like a lot of Ian McKellen scenes, but I think my favorite ones are Fassbender scenes, just because I love the one where he had to use his powers to save a dude, and then his whole, like, workplace sold him out.
Yeah.
And he went back and he's like, all right, I'm going to slaughter everyone now. I just hope that's cool. I'm also a big fan of the trope, which you see in Guardians 2 with Yondu, where it's like one small object, it just goes through a ton of dudes.
Yeah.
I love that, and like he's someone who has had some great scenes doing that similar thing, like where he gets the knife off the wall and kills like the Nazi guys who like got away and got undercover. That's like in the bar. There's some really good stuff.
Good character, good actors, good movies,
and a character that can do a lot of interesting things in scenes that make them interesting.
Yeah, and you can babyface them, which they have.
Yeah,
for both of them, they babyface both McKellen and Fassbender. So
I look forward to him in MCU.
So the first show of the month opens with Loki defending.
Sorry, I just had whiplash then. Just going straight to the X division.
We went from X-Men to the X division. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, the X-Men division.
So Loki defeated Christopher Daniels and Kid Cash in your favorite match of the month by a landslide.
Yeah, this match rocked. I think it's mostly I liked that Daniels was kind of a heel. Sorry, not a heel. He was kind of a face in this. He got over because he was just doing cool shit. They all just did cool shit, and that is the way to my heart.
Yeah, you're right about Daniels' Asai moonsault, by the way. It's very good.
Yeah. Daniels rocks.
Loki got a huge reaction in this match for doing the top rope double stomp to break up a pin.
It's a great move.
And the crowd are getting back into Loki. It's like, Loki's just doing cool shit and the crowd are like, oh, yes, we like this guy. Let's cheer him.
It's crazy how his thing broke apart for a while there.
Because they were treating him as a nerd and now he's just back to winning matches and doing cool shit. Suddenly the crowd are into him again. Huh. It's interesting how that works.
Yeah, I know, right?
So yeah, Loki won the match. He's number one contender for the X Division title, but Cash laid him out after the match with the smash mouth to the face, but then Don Harris ran him off.
Yeah, big Cash Don Harris feud still going.
So later in the show, we cut the backstage where Loki and Daniels are brawling, and then Daniels hits him with a chair.
Yeah, that was a pretty brutal chair shot.
Yeah, because Loki was going to Japan, but they made him number one contender, so they had to take him out for a week to tell a story.
But I didn't mind it though, and I like that because we're getting into the reformation of Triple X, that it wasn't just they're all friends again, there's some dissension still between Daniels and Key, which will have to be resolved.
Yeah, Daniels and Loki still hate each other for good reason, because, he just hit him with a chair and took his title shot away.
Yeah, and Skipper's like, no, I'm going to get you both on the same side, though.
So yeah, I would question Eric Watt's decision-making process when he's like, all right, so Loki's taken out by Christopher Daniels. Let's give Daniels the title shot instead.
Well, Garrett.
Yes.
Daniels hasn't declared his allegiance to Jeff Jarrett, and the other option was Kid Cash.
Are you suggesting that perhaps Eric Watts is wielding his power to try and influence people to his side?
Just saying. Someone was on the fence.
I would personally just say that if I were in TNA, I would start attacking people that have title shots.
Unrelated to this, just in general.
Yeah, just attacking people just to take their title shot away from them.
Yeah. I always liked that when they would do it immediately before a match, because they're like, oh god, we need someone right now, and you're the only one here, you have to take the shot.
Yeah, that makes more sense though.
Yeah. Like Edge taking out Kofi before the Elimination Chamber.
And they're like, well, fuck, what do we do? Fine.
Yeah, he's like, and he just forced himself into the chamber. Like, well, I guess you're in it.
Nobody's here to say no.
Yeah, and we got to start the match.
So on that first show of the month, Saban and Dutt are backstage with Scott Hudson. Sanjay talks about his unprecedented rise, and then Saban starts to suggest, what if we did Ultimate X2? Huh? Ultimate X2, huh?
And Scott's like, Ultimate X2?
He's flabbergasted at the mere suggestion.
How are they going to top Ultimate X1?
Ideally by the belt not
Probably
falling
by having
down.
a belt that stays on it.
Yes. Which leads us to Shane Douglas and Michael Shane defeating Chris Sabin and Sanjay Dutt after Tracy with an eye hit the pie in the sky and Sanjay Dutt allowing Shane to hit a super kick for the win. This match was very interesting to me because Shane Douglas was bumping like a madman for Sabin and Sanjay.
He also was like, I'm going to work this X Division style.
Like, it's very rare that you see a guy of the legacy and the stature of Shane Douglas. Not that he was this huge star in the industry, but he's a guy who's been around for a long time, who's usually more cynical than this. But like, this match is built to Sanjay getting the hot tag and Shane Douglas being the guy who's tagged in on the other end of the hot tag. And like, Shane Douglas just bumps for Sanjay. He just bumps for him. He just, every single move Sanjay does, Shane Douglas he doesn't cut him off. There's no ego there. He just bumps and feeds for Sanjay in a way that was like, I'm impressed by you here, Shane Douglas, just by your sheer lack of ego.
I think he enjoys getting young talent over at this stage. Because even when he wanted to do his own thing for a while there, he was like, my big focus here is that I want to get young talent and help them get over.
Yeah, so Shane is now the longest reigning X Division champion in TNA history. About 4 months.
Wow. What a reign.
That's a thing that's being reinforced. But this is an 18-month-old company, so you know what? Having a 4-month reign isn't bad.
Especially in a belt designed to be kind of thrown about.
Especially in the early days when they did throw that belt about, especially between Styles, Loki, and Lynn. They're just like, bounce it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Styles and Lynn are like 7-time champions at this point.
Yeah, remember Shawn Maltman had the belt?
No.
So Sabin goes to do his big step-up dive to Shane Douglas, but Shane Douglas pulls Tracy in the way. Sabin is honourable. He doesn't do it.
Of course.
A decent man.
Because now he's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a babyface now, apparently.
Sabin of like 3 months ago would have been like, yeah, well, I don't give a shit.
I'll jump on a woman.
Yeah.
I enjoy franchise. I just enjoy franchise because there's a moment where like he's in the ring with Sanjay and he does a shoulder block and he takes Sanjay down and he just does a cackle.
Yeah, he's great.
He's just like, ah ha ha, I took down Sanjay Dutt.
Ow.
He's very pleased with himself.
Ain't I great?
He's like Jeff Jarrett, yeah.
If Shane Douglas was in the Jarrett position.
I think the show would be better, honestly.
Because these promos would be more fun, at least.
I think Shane Douglas is a more giving performer.
Yeah.
So yeah, Douglas and Shane won after Shane won with the super kick.
Douglas and Shane.
Yes, the new franchise.
That's what they should call themselves.
No, they should just be called Shane Douglas.
Shane Douglas.
It's both of them. It's not the first one.
Yeah. Should be Shane and Shane.
NWA-TNA Baby number 74, X Division title match between Christopher Daniels and Michael Shane. Most notable for the hard way blood that Christopher Daniels got in this match. They showed a video package the following week where they showed the very deep cut over his, I think, right eye. That, goodness, that was a lot of blood.
I really enjoyed during the watch along where you're like, do you think it was hard way? And then 10 minutes later, we're like, it was definitely a hard way.
Yeah, because I was watching this where Daniels is bleeding a lot. I'm like, the structure of this match doesn't really suggest to me that Daniels bled intentionally. And the pattern of the blood was that not the traditional over the forehead. It was more like around the side of the face. Where it's like, oh, that does look hard way. And as you mentioned, the next week they do show a backstage video of just a violent cut over Daniel's right eye. It's a deep looking one as well.
It was like the side of his head. We dextered this.
Mm.
We looked at the blood patterns and we to determine that in fact it was a hard way.
We did a whole CSI Miami, turned to the camera, pulled the glasses off. It's like, it looks like it was hard way. Yow! Yeah, decent little match otherwise. The blood did add to it. The blood of hard way blood is always just so much more distinct than a traditional pro wrestling blade job.
Yeah. Because it's real. I like when people get hard white blood. They there's a moment of fuck, and I gotta roll with it.
Well,
which leads to I gotta talk about the promos.
Yeah, the most famous version of that is of course the Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly match, which is dying a death and then blood, and suddenly it's the best match in Ring of Honor history.
Yeah, I remember that match was one of the matches that got me in on Ring of Honor.
Because I remember being on Twitter during that match. And literally everyone being this kind of sucks. And then the blood came up, and it's by the end of that match, it's oh, this is the best match in Ring of Honor history.
All it takes is some teeth getting knocked out.
Yeah. So Michael Shane retains. Tracy tried to interfere, but Daniels kicked out of the super kick. Shane then tried to use a chain, but Sabin stopped him, threw the chain to Daniels. Daniels used the chain, but...
Perfect, by the way.
Yeah, because he kicked it out of his hand, and Shane flung it backward, and Daniels caught it. Very satisfyingly done.
100%.
And Daniels used the chain, but the referee happened to turn around as he used it and saw Daniels using it. Disqualification win for Michael Shane.
Garrett, I have an off-topic thing.
Sure.
But I want to get your impressions on this.
Go ahead.
A Fightful Wrestling at Fightful tweeted 1 hour ago. Mm-hmm. Will Smith slaps former TNA star Chris Rock at the Oscars.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the acknowledgement.
Right.
I feel slightly like our bit has been stolen.
Yeah, they're chasing the clout of the You've Got to Be Kidding Me podcast.
A little bit, a little bit.
Because, every episode since Chris Rock appeared has started with the opening quote on each episode of our podcast. TNA is the best wrestling in the world. Chris Rock is an integral part of our podcast.
Yeah.
Chris Rock has been on nearly every episode.
For some reason, Garrett, me typing Chris Rock YouTube didn't pull up our video first.
Damn it, we don't have the SEO. Are you replying to the tweet with the...
Yes.
Very good, well done. This is live, on-air, buzz marketing of the podcast. Hello, friends.
I think it hid my response because it was just a link.
Listen, let me retweet it. I will boost it.
There we go. We're making moves, making $1 million moves.
We're attempting to
I'll link you.
Manipulate Sean Ross Sapp's platform for our own benefit.
Listen, if he does it, we can do it too.
Retweet, like. I'm going to retweet and like it from the podcast account now.
Yeah. This is how we get the 1,000.
Retweet, like. This is what our discussion of the X Division has descended into. So there you go. You should go to @thegleetmuta, find Liam's tweet about...
Or just go to your Twitter and find it.
I'm trying to buzz market your Twitter here, Liam. I'm trying to push people toward your wonderful Twitter account, and then you just deflect.
To your wonderful Twitter account.
Which has a lot of followers. Too many,
Alright, there's no need for that.
Flexing with my followers on you. Yeah, Michael Shane retained by DQ. Daniels and Sabin brawled after the match. Later in that same show, we get Chris Sabin versus Shane Douglas. Sabin beats Douglas with a victory roll. Shane and Tracy tried to interfere, but failed. Again, franchise just losing to Chris Sabin.
I like that he's willing to do this. I don't know if I like that this is happening right at the start of the new franchise.
This stable is already kind of a dud.
Yeah, but I felt like it had potential because I like everyone involved.
So they're already just like an X Division stable. Like, Douglas is basically a manager who wrestles.
I kind of thought this was going to be a bigger deal, but apparently not.
Yeah, a wacky contrast of styles between these two. Just like Shane Douglas, your like traditional pro wrestling heel, works a very traditional pro wrestling style in this kind of match, and then Sabin with your modern kind of cruiserweight style of the indies, like coming out of WCW, that post WCW cruiserweight indie hybrid style. And yeah, it's just interesting to see these two in the ring together.
I don't hate it though.
Yeah, it's a fun little contrast. It's also a battle of the colors of yellow and black.
Ooh,
Both very fond of those two colors.
I feel like Douglas perhaps gets the right to the colors.
He has perhaps been using them a tad bit longer.
Just a smidge.
And they're Philadelphia sports colors, aren't they? That's where you got the yellow and black from, right?
Yes.
I think that's true. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, okay, you get the Philadelphia, and then like green.
I think that it's the Penguins, isn't it?
The Penguins?
Pittsburgh. Or Pennsylvania sports, not Philadelphia sports. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the Penguins colors, yellow and black. See, I've already corrected myself. To the people who were writing the messages being like, you meant Pittsburgh sports, not Philadelphia sports, already corrected myself. If you wrote that message, I know you didn't listen far enough into the show.
If you wrote that message, you're a fucking idiot.
So yeah, there's also a fun stat that Franchise's career is as old as Chris Sabin is. He's been wrestling as long as Chris Sabin has been alive. I always like those fun little things.
Jesus Christ.
Yes. So Sabin won with a roll-up, which brings us to the next week, in which Loki finally gets his X Division Championship match against Michael Shane. But earlier in that show, because of the issues they had coming out of that X Division title match, Christopher Daniels faces Chris Sabin.
Mm-hmm.
Main thing from this match, Daniels won with the Angel's Wings after Elix Skipper returned to TNA to cost Sabin the match and then threw up the Triple X gesture, which Daniels then kind of winked at. He was like, ooh, I'm intrigued by this Triple X proposal.
It's prime time, baby. This made me think that, like, they were aligned, but I think we found out later in the show that they were kind of... This is Skipper doing it of his own volition, trying to get the boys back together, which I like a lot more.
Yeah, so Skipper is the kind of catalyst here, trying to put Triple X back together, knowing that Daniels and Loki are at odds at the moment. But yeah, I like the idea that he didn't even consult Daniels about it. It's not even like, oh, Daniels, I'll come out and cost Sabin this match. It's like, no, I'll do that as my gesture of good faith toward Daniels, trying to put Triple X back together.
Mm-hmm.
So a note, Elix Skipper signed a 2-year deal with TNA last week, thus his return to the company.
No, locked down.
No, that's a pay-per-view in 2005.
Shut up.
Michael Shane defeated Loki to retain the X Division title after he got his knees up in a 450 and then grabbed a small package. A note about that finish. Finish looked botched. This is from the Wrestling Observer. As Loki did a 450 moonsault. It's just a 450, Dave. You don't need a moonsault. But got his knees up and cradled Loki. Loki appeared to kick out. The ref counted 3 anyway, and everyone just stood there as like something screwed up. Apparently what happened was that it wasn't the scheduled finish. Shane's body went numb. It was a scary night because apparently that happened to Altar Boy Luke as well earlier in the show. Since he could hardly move, he called for the finish off that move as an audible. Loki wasn't supposed to lose clean. Tracy and Shane Douglas are supposed to come out and interfere, which is why he'd have a gripe and set up the Ultimate X. So all of the stuff that happened after the match was just kind of meant to be the finish of the match because they did the 450. Shane cradled Loki. Then Tracy faked a knee injury, which was supposed to be what led to the interference from Shane Douglas. Like the referee was supposed to check on the knee injury. Shane Douglas ran out, cost Loki the match. Michael Shane wins. But because they skipped all that, Tracy still faked the knee injury, which was like, oh, does she actually get hurt? Because Loki brought her up for the key crusher, and then Michael Shane knocked them both over. So like there was a moment that was like, is she actually hurt? Because it made no sense within the context of what they were doing, but it made sense within the context of what they were meant to do. So there you go.
And I don't even get mad at this though. It's just one of those things that happens.
Yeah, it's just an unfortunate occurrence. So yeah, Shane Douglas comes out. They attack Loki. Elix Skipper makes the save, brawls to the back with Shane Douglas. Daniels comes out, gets back into it with Loki. They're still not pals. They're fighting.
Yeah, but he makes the save first. Like he makes the save for Key, and then they like have an awkward knock each other moment, and then they start throwing hands.
Yeah. So then Shane, Loki, Sabin, and Daniels are all brawling in the ring, separated into 4 corners by security until Eric Watts comes out and announces that all 4 men will face off on January 7th in the second Ultimate X match with the X Division title on the line.
I'm excited.
Yeah, Ultimate X 2. It's fun to see like the development of this stipulation, to see, ideally that they don't screw it up and don't have the belt fall, which they don't. But we'll see.
We see a death in this one.
There has never been a death in Ultimate X, I'll have you know.
You know what I mean.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
One of those classic Ultimate X, someone almost dies taking a move at some point, moments.
No, there's only a couple of those.
Yeah, but they involve Daniels half the time, so I'm like, I was just curious if this is one of those occurrences.
Because one, Daniels has been in a lot of these matches, and he has done some very, like, enthusiastic, optimistic, ambitious bumps. And to be fair, most of them have come off. Most of them are tremendous.
Yeah. Also, this is the place to do it.
But then there is that one with Suicide, Frankie Kazarian in 2009 that when he dies.
Yeah.
See.
So someone does die.
No one has died. There's just been a suicide in Ultimate X, not a death. Hey, see what I did there?
Has there been a homicide in Ultimate X?
There has. There's been a suicide and homicide in Ultimate X, but not a death.
A genocide. Not a genocide.
No.
She hasn't done one yet.
If Sabu did Ultimate X, it would be a game changer.
If it was genocide versus homicide versus suicide versus Sabu.
In Ultimate X, yes. That is the pro wrestling dream match.
Didn't Seidel used to have like a name like that too?
Did he?
I think Matt Seidel was genocide at one point.
That's a weird name.
I think that was... I'm going to find out. You keep going.
Yeah, that's our X Division stuff for the month, for the most part. Building to Ultimate X next month, so we'll be covering that in the January 2004 episode. Ultimate X 2.
It's crazy how Ultimate X with the X Division with a direction always feels so much better.
And I think that's been the big problem. Like, I don't think the flatness of the X Division in the back half of the year has been Michael Shane's fault. I just think they've had no ideas for the X Division. Like, they have good talent.
I also think that it's also not a priority for them, you know?
I think that's illustrated by the fact that there is very few undercard X Division people at any given moment compared to how it used to be, where it's like there'd be at least 2 X Division matches in every show. You know, Sanjay shows up every so often. Like, Sanjay's in the first show of the month where he faces Douglas and Shane teaming with Sabin, but then he disappears for the rest of the month. Eric Young appeared once or twice but disappears. Like, the undercard X Division is basically non-existent. So, like, you have a good core group of talent. You have Daniels, you have Sabin, you have Shane, and you had Kazarian for a while, who's also disappeared. But it's just the lack of focus.
Yeah, that's just why as soon as they have direction, it all comes across so much better.